Alright, Nightwing. Here we are. Our very first power rankings for the Overseers. Uh, it's been wild so far. We've gone through all the 20 teams, reviewed the rosters, and yeah, we're just glad to have whoever's watching join us here today. Before we begin rating all of these teams, just remember that all of these views are subjective, and usually power rankings cause a lot of like a, a wave of comments, and we'd really appreciate it if you kept those civil and polite in the comment section down below. Everyone has their own opinions, and let's try and respect those. Um, so, how are you feeling about these power rankings, Nightwing? Because we have a rather unique set of power rankings because of, we had to make some compromises based on our different opinions. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, uh, so how we made this final power rankings, this is like you made a power rankings, then I made a power rankings, then we kind of just averaged it out. Uh, I like we have some very different opinions about certain teams, uh, which is going to be interesting to go over. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's it's not exactly like what I imagined, but it's not exactly what you imagine. It's somewhere in between. So it's going to be interesting to see how accurate two cooks in one kitchen make the power rankings.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, okay, then, should we just kick things off? We'll just use the good old preds.slmn.io. I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but uh, all right. Let's go first with. So we are going to go from 20 to 1, uh, and we are. There's not going to be any regional split. We might put some tier breaks in there. We don't know yet. We just prepared the ranks and sort of decided to go with it. So yeah, I think let's go with the 20th place team, which is surprise surprise, the LA Valiant. Uh, so the LA Valiant naturally coming in as a last minute sort of thrown in kind of roster because of the whole immortal situation. You can see our review separately in the Overseers playlist. But yeah, it's a fully Chinese team, just thrown in really quick after the Immortals disbanded their roster, and we just don't think it's a very promising team because they have some players who haven't played this game professionally for a while. So you have like a couple of players from T1W like Silver 3 and I don't remember who else. Silver 3 and Hybe, I think. They won T1W and they haven't played the game professionally in over a year. And then you have NVM who just retired 3 years ago, came in as a coach and was put in as a player. And then they have Hybe who's an off tank, fielded on main support. So this is just a totally scuffed roster, although the DPS line seems promising with Crystal and Molandran. Um, Still, we don't think this team can really keep up with the competition here, considering how little sort of scrim time they've had compared to the other teams and the sort of gap they've had in some of their careers. So, yeah, Nightwing, do you want to chime in on the Valiant?
No, I think you're pretty much spot on.
Alright. So, yeah, you can go ahead with the number 19 team.
Yeah, so at number 19, we've put the Vancouver Titans. Um, and most people are putting these people uh, at the bottom of NA, and for pretty decent, like good reason. There really none of their like none of the people on their roster are really inspiring much confidence, to be honest with you. And really, it's just that other teams are so much better that I don't think Vancouver can really compete. Especially the NA region, there are just some insane teams at the top, which I mean, they'll always get basically free wins against Vancouver. So I'm not seeing them uh, doing too well. Uh, with Teru, I'm not entirely sure what their situation will be, but I mean, a tank like Threadlock is not very inspiring, uh, and I don't know. I'm just not really convinced about this team. What do you think, Cornelius?
I mean, yeah, I think we've all established that the Titans are a very underwhelming team overall, and even their coaching staff is fairly unproven at the Overwatch League level. So although Flubby and Pew, I think the coaches, they've come in from second win last year with some of these players, but they haven't really shown us that much to go on. So, and like even the players don't inspire too much confidence. So that's why we've placed this team at the bottom of NA, but still 19th in the standings. I think, according to me, the positions of these teams are interchangeable if the Valiant actually perform really well, compared to where we think they are, and then they might prove to be better than the Titans. But I think it's pretty much clear that they're going to be at the bottom of their respective regions. I think there's no debate about that. Should we move on to number 18?
Yeah,
Alright, so at 18, and we were pretty much in agreement on this one. That's the Paris Eternal. Uh, so the Eternal have gone back to the sort of USP of having a fully European roster. Uh, Despite that, I think, um, because they lost so much of their signature talent during the off season, they had to make some underwhelming pickups. Their tank line, especially with Dan and Elevort, doesn't inspire confidence. Their DPS line with Naga, Onigod, and Suna, that's okay but below average still. And I think the support line is still fairly decent, with Khan having some potential on the flex support role and Neptuno being a veteran. But that's still not much to go on. And they also have sort of an unproven rookie head coach in Get Amazed. So we are not expecting them to do really well, and that's why they are in the bottom three essentially. Nightwing, you can chime in on this.
yeah. I mean, even in our Paris episode, I think we have the most praise for Avala, probably more than any of the players. Um, I think it's great that EU talent is in the league, but uh, I think for an example of better, like a better caliber of EU talent, you'd probably look at the Spitfire. I think Paris are just a step below them, and yeah, I'm not expecting anything great from them.
Yeah, you can move on to number 17.
Yeah, so at number 17 we have the Boston Uprising. So this team, I mean, uh, I'm at least happy to see them make some improvements over their last year's roster, and uh, all these tournaments that they've been playing in Steel Series, Valiant Bowl, uh, and what was the other one? I don't know.
I
Um,
think that's it. Don't think they played anything else.
I think there was one. Not sure. Anyway, so they've been looking good, or at least better than their last season's look. I think part of it has to do with Stand One coming in as their main tank over Fusions. Uh, they've also added some WGS players. Uh, I think uh, that does bolster their roster a bit, and so at least puts them above teams like Paris Titans and the LA Valiant. And yeah, I mean, they got rid of Soon, so I'm a bit concerned about their tracer play. But I mean, it's better than what it was last year. They also have Lori, which is uh, at least something. Uh, yeah, I mean, good luck to Boston. I think Boston fans, like diehard Boston fans, that have actually stuck with them over the course of last year, they're probably just happy to see these additions to the roster.
hmm I think soon
Yeah.
leaving was a fairly big blow because they lost a really key player over there. I think he was the better hit scan compared to I am 37. Um, but still, I think, yeah, like you said, the team is a little bit shaky overall because he's no longer there. But I think the best part about this team is honestly the support line because Faith and Myeonbong have some really good potential. Myeonbong has already proven to be a really good flex support, and Faith also coming in from WGS with his teammates Valentine and I'm37, and also Coach Lori. So this is an exciting set of additions, and I think these additions in particular are what's going to keep Boston competitive in certain metas. But naturally, the rest of the team isn't up to the mark, which is why they are still in our bottom five pretty much. Should we then move on to rank 16, Nightwing?
Yeah.
Alright, so at rank 16, we've put the Chengdu Hunters. Um, so the Hunters made some interesting additions this season. Gaga in particular, Gaga and Farway 1987, they are the biggest ones because they are coming in from Team CC, which was the best team in Chinese contenders for like 2 years, um, and they've got a lot of great synergy and versatility on the main support. On the flex support and main tank roles. Um, but still, I think the off tank situation is really poor for them with Late Young and Elsa not being at a competent level anymore. Um, I think the support line is still promising because of Farway, and even Nisha shows some promise, I think. Um, where this team has struggled overall is their sort of reluctance to play the meta because of Coach Rui or RUI, however you want to pronounce that. I think if Rui decides to play the meta a little bit more, he can do that this season because of Gaga. And there are some DPS additions like Jimmy and Kaneki. Not like, well, there are Jimmy and Kaneki to help them out with that. So, yeah, I think if they had some more, if they had better off tank players, and if they had some more consistent DPS players, I think this would be a really good team, but it's just not at the moment. What do you think, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think off tank is a bit of a sore spot for this team. Uh, DPS are not that convincing either. I think the support line is probably decent. Uh, might actually be the most promising. Like even though Gaga's there on the tank role, like the off tank is just not very inspiring. Uh, but yeah, I mean Chengdu can always surprise. They might just pick up wins against teams that you didn't expect. Uh, but I think they're still going to have some issues. I think they should be at a better level than they were last year, but I think it's just that the entirety of the league is improving at this moment. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So the next team on the list is the London Spitfire, uh, which comes in from mostly from British Hurricane and EU contenders, and as we've discussed, they've. I mean, one of the best things about this team is that they've had a lot of continued consistent success, and they haven't had any major issues in all that time. And at this point, the roster is mature enough that you wouldn't expect a lot of huge issues that just like make the team blow up. uh, a counter example of that would be like Dallas from last year, where they just had a lot of player issues. I don't think I would expect that from this roster. I had actually put them higher up, I believe, slightly. No, I had them in the exact same spot actually.
I had put them higher up.
Oh, you had put them higher up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, uh, it's going to be interesting to see if this team can deliver. So one of the things I thought about the London Spitfire was that it was this Steel Series tournament, I think, where there was a match between Gladiators and London. That was the semi-finals of that tournament, and then in the finals there was Boston and Gladiators. I remember thinking that the London Glads match should have been uh, the actual finals of that tournament. So that's why I definitely think they're at least better than the Boston Uprising. Uh, I think for the rest of the league, I mean, they'll have to be tested really. That's why they're a bit low. But I am excited to see this roster compete against the rest of the Overwatch League.
Mhm. Yeah, so the reason I had put London higher is because I feel like this is one of the few teams in the Overwatch League which has come in with a lot of pre-existing synergy. Very rarely do you see almost an entire contenders team being picked up and just brought into the Overwatch League. And the last time we saw something like that happen was with the Vancouver Titans in season 2, where they had just picked up Runaway, right? And the team absolutely crushed. Uh, I don't think any of us is expecting London to be like that, which is obviously why they are in rank 15. Um, but still, I think the tank line of Hardy and Molfig is essentially meta proof. They have played in every single meta together. Almost every single meta, you can say. They've just played all of the tank combinations to a really high level. Um, and this will certainly add to their quality of play because there are still a handful of tank lines which have come together for the very first time. And tank diff is actually real, guys. I think this can really help them get some extra wins. Where London falls short for me are the DPS and support lines. Although I think players like Shax and Sparker are incredibly promising, uh, London has a really risky flex DPS signing in Blase, who hasn't really shown his skill so far, although he does seem to be individually talented just based on watching his stream and even seeing him play heroes like Doomfist and Genji. Uh, and also they have picked up a temporary sort of hit scan. I mean, it's not officially a temporary signing, but let's face it, Hybrid's not going to be playing when Sparker comes of age. So while Hybrid and Blase sort of have the reins, I think the DPS line is going to be underwhelming. Shax is the bright spot where he can play the Tracer really well. And when Shax and Sparker come in, they can definitely do some really amazing stuff. And with the support line, I'm really positive about Reaper as a flex support. He's just really good on, especially on Zen, and just getting picks, and he's just really consistent on all the flex supports. But still, Kelex is another sort of he's sort of an underwhelming main support, but he he is a key piece in this squad because of his synergy with the British Hurricane players. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think people might be sleeping on the tanks, but that's all.
Something interesting I want to mention is that like on the Liquipedia page, uh, when you try to open hybrids like player details, uh, they've like messed up. So hybrid the map type shows up instead of hybrid the player.
Yeah.
So it's just like, who is hybrid? Attackers first capture a payload, then escort is to its destination. Defenders attempt to hold them back. Yeah, yeah, so that's a bit disrespectful to hybrid, but yeah.
Mm,
Anyway, so
yeah.
who's the next team?
So the next team coming in at rank 14 is the Houston Outlaws. Now there are a lot of people that are way higher on this team, but Nightwing and I are pretty much in agreement that they don't belong anywhere near the top half of the rankings. So the Houston Outlaws have made some interesting pickups this time round. They, I think, have a pretty good tank line with pre-existing synergy because Django and Piggy, I think they can be an above average tank line. Uh, and since they've played together for Talon Esports, they've got some good synergy going. I think especially in a meta like Brawl with Ryan Zarya, with Piggy, I think could be one of the best Zaryas in the league this year. This tank line is going to be way better than Hydration and Meko, I think. Uh, where this team falls short for me at least is the DPS line. Although you've got consistent player presence like Dante and you can you can maybe put KSF in there. I don't think the caliber of players is quite there. You do have someone really strong like Happy, but he sort of has some dry patches throughout his gameplay. If he's in form, I think he's one of the best hit scan players in the league. But still, and I mean, they also have Jake, who just hasn't played professionally in a year, And although he is slotted in as a player coach, they might just want to play him at certain points. The support line is just overall average. I think Crimzo is probably somewhere around league average. He's one of the best Western flex supports still. But they've got a rookie main support in Juby. Um, and we still have to see how good he is. And I also think that having two head coaches in Harsha and Jankbak is going to cause some clashes in opinion, and that might lead to certain sort of confusing strats, or maybe just, I don't know, some form of conflict which could cause the team to suffer a little bit. But that's just me. I mean, Harsha and Jankbak are both reliable coaches. If they figure out a structure to work with each other, I think they can do better. But for now, we are just going to keep them at rank 14. Nightwing, any further points on your side?
I think I'm not too hot on Django. Piggy, I think, is gonna be probably the better of the tank duo, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Uh, for Happy, I think he's kind of like the Korean Linkser, where like sometimes he'll just absolutely pop off, and other times he's quite silent. Uh, so yeah, it's a bit up and down. I think the bedrock for this team is probably gonna be Dante, and uh, everyone else will just kind of be a bit up and down. That's why they're quite low. I don't think like people are counting scrimbucks for them or something like that. You see ZP coming out with tweets that Houston are severely underrated, but I'm not
Mm.
convinced. Um, I don't think Harsha and Jumpup will have huge issues, but I mean it's a possibility. Uh, yeah, that's all. Oh yeah, one more thing I wanted to mention. I think I didn't mention this in our Houston roster review. Jake has actually been grinding a lot of flex support in ranked. Like
Mm.
that's basically all he plays. So they might be preparing him for like playing double flex support with Crimzo if the need be. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting to see. Uh, Hydration made tank now Jake flex support. Interesting. Um, anyway, yeah. So on to the next team then. The next team we have is the New York Excelsior. So I think I was higher on this team than you are, Prelios.
Yeah.
Uh, just because like the like I would actually wasn't very knowledgeable about the players initially, but like uh, after going back and watching firstly their match against Guangzhou, uh, which like really changed my opinions about them and made me want to actually research about them. Uh, and then I watched the players themselves, some of them individually. I'm actually quite convinced that this team is not going to be that bad. Um, I think in my power rankings, I had them put like 2 or 3 ranks above this. Um, but so it's completely fair though because a lot of these players are rookies, and I mean, a lot of them are untested against most of the rest of the Overwatch League. Uh, the only player that really has been tested, uh, I mean, there's 3 of them, so uh, that are coming into this roster. Uh, no, 2, right? They already have Bianca. So Ivy is pretty good, but he was given like he had to share bench time with some other players on Philadelphia, and Yakpang has not been impressive previously in the Overwatch League, even though he has had some success in contenders. So I mean, it's understandable where the kind of question marks arrive from. So yeah, I think this is a fair spot for NYXL actually.
Mm. Yeah, so I do think the NYX will have a pretty good DPS line this year. They have a veteran presence in Ivy who slots into a lot of different flex DPS heroes. I think his best one is probably Hanzo, I would say. Um, but sorry, excuse me. They also have a really good hitscan player in Guangbong. I think that guy's rookie of the year potential if you buy the space for him. Um, the support line, I think Jonak is a promising flex support still, although people are calling him sort of washed up. But I don't think Friday is a particularly good pickup. I think he's going to be one of the worst main supports in the league. Because like I ranted about in the NYXL review, Friday was just feeding his brains off down in contenders. So I don't really know why he's been picked up. Presumably he worked well with Jonak in tryouts. Otherwise they wouldn't have picked him up. But still, I'm cautious about still rating the support line highly. And the tank line's also fairly unproven. Although people are saying that, excuse me again. Although people are saying Yakpang has improved a lot in contenders, I, I really don't think he's that good. We still have way, way, way better main tanks in the league. And alongside a sort of average off tank like Bianca, or even below average, you could say, there could be just a tank diff on many occasions against them. And even in the coaching stuff, I think why not's first run as a head coach, and that comes with its growing pains. The NYXL have had a lot of different coaching changes over the years. I still think why not is headed in the right direction because he's trying to build the team around Jonak, which is what they did back in season 1 when Wizard Hyong was coaching. And that's when they were at their best, right? The NYXL were the best team in the regular season in season 1. So he is onto something over here, but I don't think the structure here is quite as good as it was back in season 1. So yeah, I think this is a good spot for them as well.
With Friday, like we've mentioned with, or at least I've mentioned with all the other episodes, I'm still like a bit puzzled about the whole horse gaming, like just the bunch of pickups that have been made. Like
Mm.
there has to be something like that we have just missed about that particular contenders team, because many Overwatch League teams apparently wanted to sign a lot of these guys, which is interesting. So like they've got Checkmate as well, Friday, and then there's the other guy. I don't remember what's.
Skewed.
Yeah, Skewed on LA Gladiators. So that's gonna be interesting to see. Maybe it will just like build up some clouds for Oz Gaming that these guys do well. Um,
Hmm.
anyway, yeah. So who's the next team?
Alright, so at number 12, we've got the Florida Mayhem. And this might seem like a hot take to a lot of you out there because the Mayhem are generally a team that's, mm, I mean, last season they did really well. Uh, Nightwing had placed this team higher as well in his power rankings, but I think because of me, we held them back a little bit. The main reason being that I just don't trust OG at this point. This guy has been really, really inconsistent. Like Nightwing mentioned in our roster review, he's been consistently inconsistent. And I think he just reduces the stonks of the tank line a fair bit because you've got an excellent off tank in Gargoyle, right? You know what you're going to get out of him. He plays all of the off tanks to a really high level. But OG is just, I mean, most of the time when he plays, he's having a bad day. It feels like that to me. Uh, Even if he doesn't go and feed, he just doesn't make the plays that he used to make back in season 1. Uh, and I just don't think he's going to like suddenly become a consistent player. Uh, I mean, if he turns out to be consistent, this team can just shoot their way up the rankings, but it's incredibly unlikely, which is why I sort of placed the Mayhem so low. I do still think they have a decent DPS line because Yaki and BQB built up good synergy last year. With the addition of Checkmate, again from Oz Gaming, we don't know where we are getting because from what we've seen of Checkmate, he's not that good of a player. But remains to be seen what happens. The support line's pretty good. I think Slime and Gangnam Jin, just kind of like a two-generation runaway backline. Sort of an interesting storyline there. And I think Cookie is a really reliable coach. I think he's molded this team already and sort of figured out their play style and structure. So I think he's got that figured out. But since I'm not high on OG, rather I'm pretty low on OG, that's where this team is right now. So yeah, Nightwing, you can share your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the main points of concern for this roster mainly has to be OG, uh, and maybe checkmate other side. Though I wouldn't be surprised if they would mostly just play BQB and Yaki, because that's something that really seemed to work out for them really well. Pookie has solid coaching. He's a former player and he really understands how to get into that player's mentality. And he has a very good hierarchy with his players where they respect him but also learn quite well from him. That's kind of what helped Florida do well last season, I think. And they really punched above their weight. But with an inconsistent main tank, without Fate and with OG, I think it's going to be harder for them. Interestingly, both of us put like Florida and NYXL together in like both of our power rankings, where NYXL was below and Florida was above. Uh, it's just because I was very low on some other teams and you were a bit high on those teams. So these teams are still right like glued to each other.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm still interested to see what Florida can bring, uh, especially Yaki. I mean, he was in the talks for Rookie of the Year, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Um, and I think he was also in the running for MVP, right?
I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, Rookie of the Year for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, that guy has a lot of potential still that he can showcase in the Overwatch League. BQB is solid, and I enjoy seeing the DPS duo. I'm just not so sure about the rest of the team, especially OG. Uh, Backline's all right, not bad. Uh, yeah. Anyway, so we'll move on to the next team on the list then, which is the Washington Justice. So, so about this team, I had actually put it much higher up. I think mine was like fifth or something.
Yeah.
But Prolius is very low on this team. Uh, Yours was, I think, 17th, something like that. Where
Sorry.
you actually put them, you put them, I think, like 16th or 17th, right? Where it was
Oh
like
yeah.
below
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah, yeah. This is probably like the hottest solar system powered take in in any power ranking so far. But yeah, you can share your thoughts first, and then I'll explain why I put them solo.
Yeah. So, uh, look, I'm a huge Decay fan. Like, I don't know if he's gonna do something that's kind of messed up, like player personality wise. You can never really say, but like, I'm at least a fan of his gameplay. I can say that much. And I was really happy to see him come over to the Justice permanently, and they've put a really good like rest of the team around him, especially they've put Assassin on Flex GPS, which is quite good. Not so convinced about Jerry, but that's all right. Uh, I mean, not so convinced about Jerry and Tuba, honestly, but I mean, they can be used to some degree, I guess. Mag and Fury, very solid. I think what Prolius is mostly concerned about is the backline, which is Baby and Closer. Uh, and I'm just not really that concerned, honestly. I think uh, some people are very low on Bebe, but and that might seem to be the case. Like that might turn out to be the case, but watching them play at least on like open scrims or just like having seen Bebe in the past, it's not that like alarming to me. It's definitely a step down from the rest of the roster. I think the support line is their weakest just role, but I think this team is still pretty solid, and I think averaging it out, this can seem like a fair spot for this team because I guess I'm being a bit of an optimist. Broilers is being a bit of a pessimist, and this is what we end up with in between. What do you think, Broilers?
I mean, that's fair the way you broke that down. And yeah, Nightwing's right. I have major concerns about the support line. The thing is, in the league, we've seen like so far, um, we've never seen any team with a poor support line be in the top half really. Uh, like especially when people rank this team third or fourth, I just go bonkers because I mean, honestly, just name a team that has been third or fourth that has had a bad support line. I genuinely think Closer and Bebe are two of the worst supports in the Overwatch League this season. I mean, this could very well be the weakest backline after the Los Angeles Valiant and maybe the Vancouver Titans as well. Um, but the things, I mean, okay, just look at all the poor backlines we've had, like, right, like, look at maybe Chris and Byram from Florida in 2019. Florida was absolutely bottom tier. Look at Kellex and Persia, played for Boston in 2019. Look at Rockus and Boink, Houston. Rolf and Kaka last year for Vancouver. I mean, these teams just sort of dragged everyone else down despite having some promising pieces. I mean, if you looked at Florida with Chris Byron, they still had someone like Gargoyle on the team, who was an absolutely crack player. They still had BQB, who now we know as a really consistent hit scan player. Back then, even Saya play was really good. Then you look at Rockus and Boink, who had way more consistent players on their team. They had like Dante, especially. Jake at that time was actually doing pretty well, especially in triple DPS. Um, Muma wasn't that bad either. And then Rolf and Kaka, well, they had players like Shockwave, especially, and then KSA. In I think a team with a poor support line is just dragged down a lot more than you can imagine. And even though you have legends like Mag, Fury, DK, even Assassin to some extent, I think if they don't get the sort of support they need, they are going to just be dragged down a lot. And you're right, this is a pessimistic ranking when I put them at 16th or 17th. But I'm just thinking of it as what if my guess is just completely right? Because, okay, you might still get away with having the support line in, let's say, a Rush meta with Moira Lucio. But what are they going to do, let's say, when Bap Zen becomes a thing? What are they going to do when you have to play Ana Brig? I don't see the support line doing that well in those situations. Because Closer hasn't shown that much promise on Brig, especially. And Bebe is just one of the weakest Anas and Zens we have right now. Although he was, I think, pretty darn good for the Spark in Season 2, which is why they were a really competent team back then. So that's the reason I put Washington down below. I could have placed them a little bit higher, but yeah, that's why. And I also don't think Supreme is that good of a coach. He's really not been that impressive. When he was handed the keys to the Spark in Season 2, he just had a star-studded roster over there when everyone was at the top of their respective games. And that's when he just, made hay while the sun shone, but the sun's not shining anymore on the support line, so I really don't think Supreme's got a lot in him. Uh, okay, that said, should we move on or do you want to add any more points?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I mean, those are very fair criticisms. I'm not too high on Supreme as a coach. I think I am high on Pre as a GM. He's been managing his players wonderfully, and like as an org, they're at least caring about them. Unlike certain 20th place orgs. Um, but so that's something that's good for them. And I watched their open scrim with Soul, and Soul is a team that we've put uh, quite a bit higher uh, on these rankings, and they seemed very competitive against them. I mean, that might be like counting Scrimbucks, but it's an event that was viewed by like many people, and uh, that at least showed some promise because they were able to trade blows with Soul. And so I'm not too low on Justice. I think this this is a decent ranking for them. So who's the next team?
Alright, so at 10th place, we have another team that we sort of disagreed a fair bit on, which is the Guangzhou Charge. Now, I am fairly high on this team. Um, the primary reason being that I think they've overall got it all sorted on all roles. I still think Rio is a pretty good main tank player. He is fairly versatile. He's also got Jihoon to play the ball for his team, which I think balances it out nicely. They've also got an elite tier off tank in Krong who just plays everything to a really high level. The DPS line, Eileen showed a lot of promise last year on every single flanker that he played. And they've got Choi Sewan and Mike Lee, whom I think are going to be stable presences. I don't think they're going to do a whole lot, but even if they just do their jobs and don't pop off, that's really fine because Eileen and Kronk can handle that. The support line with Mandu and Kariv is promising as well because Kariv is really individually talented. And well, Mandu is a really strong Lucio. I would have rated this team higher if Mandu was known for more than that, maybe like Mercy and Brig. Um, but yeah, I think I still have a sort of we still have a conservative place for this team here because they are good, but they don't have that sort of top tier league potential. And I also think it's good that they've got Arachne as the head coach. He was with the San Francisco Shock, and he has this sort of crusty esque vibe to the team in the sense that he's got most bases covered in terms of hero pools. I think if he establishes those same kinds of hero rotations and player rotations, it's going to be something interesting to behold. So yeah, Nightwing, you can share your thoughts next.
Okay, so what do I think are the upsides of this roster, right? One is their head coach in Arachne, like you said. The other is Krong, who's just an absolute nut. Uh, but like after that, it starts to get less and less like reassuring. I guess the next person you could put is like Eileen. Um, so when I was watching the some tournament between like tournament match between Guangzhou and NYXL,
There's an open
uh,
scrim.
was it an open script? Uh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, so many different titles for all of these matches. It's hard to keep.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so the match between Charge and NYXL, uh, I was somewhat impressed with Karev, who was actually doing a lot more in terms of just like stat farming compared to Jonak. He was getting a lot more damage and healing done. So that was quite interesting. Um, I thought I was completely unimpressed with Mike Kelly, who was just getting absolutely boomed by Guangbong. Uh, and so I'm really just not high on him at all. And Rio was pretty much feeding on everything apart from Ryan, and even his Ryan was only like okay. I think uh, personally, like I think Rio is like one of the most forgettable main tanks like in Overwatch League, like especially last year. It's very hard to form an opinion about him. Like at least it was last year because when I think of Rio, I just think of like Orisa and not much else. And I mean, it's hard to judge Orisa gameplay anyway. But his monkey was downright atrocious in that particular match, and it hasn't ever looked particularly impressive uh, in the league either. Uh, I was the open scrim was actually being co-streamed by a contenders coach called Matter, like I may have mentioned earlier in the roster review, and he was also convinced that Rio was just absolutely feeling his brains out. Uh, and which is impressive almost in a weird way because I mean Yakpong was on the other team and people are already quite low on Yakpong. Uh, some people anyway. Uh, they did have a bit of a bright spot in Jihun when they played the ball Zarya instead of the double bubble comp. Uh, but I mean Jihun can't really be their mainstay tank because as far as I remember, he's basically just a ball one pick, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I'm just not that high on this team. I think they have some players, especially Krong, that can impress, but like as a whole, it's just not. They don't really have any other superstars. It's just like Krong on a lonely island. He's grown out his beard. He's like putting like treasure maps inside glass bottles and just throwing it out into the sea, asking for help. And he's not gonna get it because I'm not that impressed with this roster. But to be fair, like uh, I guess they have shown promise in the past, uh, even with Rio. So that can speak for something. So it's fair to put them above a team like NYXL, I guess. I personally think putting them above Justice is a bit of a stretch, but uh, with the support line on that team, it's again a bit of a toss up. So that's okay.
Hmm. And yeah, I think you can move us on to the rank 9 team in the power rankings.
Okay, so coming on to the rest of the top half of the league, we have the Atlanta Rain coming in at number 9. Uh, so this team, they've made an incredible addition in the form of Pelican, who's been looking insane coming into this season. Honestly, uh, I was watching. I don't even know what tournament it was. Was it Steel Series? Was it Valiant? I don't know. But Pelican looked really good on. He was like I think it was Tracer, Ash, and Hans. No, Tracer, Echo,
Echo.
and Tracer, Echo, and Hanzo. Yes, um, and they've also made. They've also poached Kai from the now non-existent old LA Valiant, uh, and Kai has been looking like the basically the best Western DPS in the league. I think uh, it's hard to really find many contemporaries for him, on the Western side, and yeah, I'm quite confident that he'll do quite well. Uh, Edison is also not so. The DPS line is just absolutely stacked. I think Gator and Hawk consistent. They sometimes are a bit up and down, but they have a lot of synergy together. Uh, Iris or LR15 as it has sometimes been described. Uh, he's all right. He did well in contenders, but I think he still has to prove himself in the league. Uh, I think he couldn't really even fill Dogman's shoes, honestly, when in season 3, and I think he still has a lot to prove before he can really be called like one of the great flex supports. Um, but I mean, he does have promise just because of his previous success. And Masa is consistent, good main support, not at the very top, but I mean he's good. So that's pretty much what this team is at. I think the most concerning part of this team is just their head coach, which is Sefi, because I'm not sure what he's still doing on this team as a head coach, because I don't think he really works that well strategically. Uh, Maybe as a GM he would do better because his player management is supposedly supposed to be good. Um, but yeah, they've added Hunter between us making that episode and making this episode. Hunter is quite good, so I'm excited to see him on the roster. I mean, as a coach, not as a player. Obviously, I don't think you would want Hunter as a player. Uh, but yeah, uh, interesting team. What do you think, Willis?
Yeah, so I don't think either of us would have rated this team so highly. I mean, we didn't. Our Atlanta Rain placement was just like 2 or 3 ranks apart, and I don't think either of us would have placed them this high if it weren't for their DPS line. Because they've got all bases covered with Kai, Edison, and Pelican, right? Pelican covers the flex DPS, Edison's there for that tracer and secondary hit scan, and you've got Kai for primary hit scan. So that's a really, really strong DPS line. Uh, the tank line with Gaeta and Hawk is pretty good, but slightly inflexible. I think they don't really stand out on anything except for double shield, although they can be mildly competent. The support line for me is pretty underwhelming. I'm not as high on Masa as most people. I think he had a really off year, and it's hard to recover from that sometimes, even mentally. Iris could possibly be league average, but I'm going to hold on to that thought before I rate this team higher. So, yeah, I think that's where we stand, and I agree that Sefi's not shown promise right now. I mean, at this point. So, yeah, we're really not sure how good this team's going to be. I think it's one of the most static teams in terms of placement in the Overwatch League because they've always been competitive, but they've never quite gotten into that top tier, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, last year was ridiculous. I mean, every time Atlanta would just be like the the three-headed Cerberus, like at the gates of hell, where they would just be like the gatekeepers of the top half of the league, where they would beat every team that was below them, and they would lose to every single team every single time that was above them. Like it was the most predictable. Like, yeah, you don't even need to watch their matches half the time. Um, if you had figured out the pattern at that point. So hopefully with some like just explosive power in the DPS line this season, and it's not just Edison trying to uh, wake the second DPS up, because I mean the Ulster thing last year was quite a tragedy. Uh, but this season, I think they have at least some like upset potential, just because of that more volatile DPS line. So that's going to be something interesting to look at for this team.
Hmm. Should we then move on to team number 8?
Yeah,
Alright. So this is another sort of one which we disagreed on a lot, Nightwing and I, and that's the Hangzhou Spark. Now, I rated this team quite highly. The reason being that I think they've got a really stacked lineup and a lot of different options. And with a head coach as proven as Pajion, I think it's just going to bolster their roster even more. They've got a really solid tank line. They've got Gusho as an already promising Chinese main tank. And they've got an elite level off tank as Liga to play with him. And just having both the tanks speak Chinese, it's going to be a big advantage. Uh, Especially when they've also got a backup sort of Korean tank line with Takoyaki and Banar. Takoyaki is also quite good, especially on Vincent and Reinhardt. Uh, so Hangzhou's DPS line is pretty good, I would say. Although Godsby and Architect fell out of favor a little bit, I think they still offer a good set of options to the team in terms of hero pools. They've also signed Shai, who's known as one of the best hitscan players coming out of China. And they've also signed Sominsu, who's known as a really smart player. He hasn't shown us much other than Reaper and Zarya at the out level, but from what I've seen, he's just incredibly smart with his resource management as well as engagement timings. So I am really high on Sominsu. Um, and since he has worked together with Pajion before, I'm sure Pajion also knows how to unlock his potential. Uh, I also think the Spark have a pretty good support line. They've got two main supports, two flex supports. Um, they could set up a nice rotation with MCD and Coldest on flex support, with MCD covering Moira and Bap, because he does well when uh, the meta is sustain heavy. And then you've got Coldest, who is known for Anans and coincidentally or not, um, who can cover those bases. And they've already set up a really good rotation as of last year with Mika and IDK, with Mika covering Mercy and Brig and IDK covering Lucio. So just having these many options and these many sort of combinations that you can play, and Pajion just having assembled this team really early on during the off season gives them a big advantage. And yeah, I think this also bridges some of the language barriers they had within the team, and that's why I'm highly optimistic for them. I think it's going to be a really good season compared to last year at least. You can go now, Nightwing.
okay, so conversely, I was quite low on this team. Uh, I think Gucho has shown a lot of promise in previous seasons, and they've added Liga, which makes the tank line quite strong. Not too convinced about Bernard, but he wasn't the worst part of the London Spitfire last season. So that's there. I am not really convinced about the DPS line, to be perfectly honest with you. I think Sominsu has been out of competitive play for quite a while. Even when he was in, he didn't particularly specialize in like super mechanically skilled heroes, or like I don't know. He didn't really seem that great on the big brain heroes either. I think he's just not that great at the moment, despite one very famous Twitter account being made after him. Uh, and Architect, I think he got a lot of love and respect from his time on Shock. Uh, and I mean, as a Shock fan, I can definitely I have some feelings for Architect because of that, but uh, I don't know. The DPS line is just not that convincing. I don't think Somens is that great. Shai could be promising, but he has to be tested at the Overwatch League scale. Um, as for the support line, I think yeah, MCD is all right. Cordis could look good. They've got a Chinese support line and they've got a Korean support line, which is good. I think these people are like this roster is almost spoiled for choice, and it's going to be hard to find their consistent, consistent roster. The six men that they want to field. Um, I wonder how long it will take them to really find the roster that works for them. Um, and even if they do, I think the DPS will always look much weaker than their competition, uh, despite obviously the few outliers in the Asia region. So while the tanks do look very promising, I'm still not too high on this team. But you are, so that's the pessimistic, optimistic kind of outlook again, which is why it kind of middles out to above Atlanta. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, you can start off with rank 7 now.
So at rank 7, we've got the Toronto Defiant. So these guys have obviously picked up Sado uh, as their main tank this season. They've added Hisu also from Philadelphia Fusion. Uh, and so those guys have some good pre-existing synergy. Not not too high on Logics or Nice on the DPS line. Personally, I think Nice is all right, but I really want to see him tested against Overwatch League talent. I think while looking good at lower tiers is promising. It's not very reassuring at the moment to me. Um, I think Michelle is just not that great, to be perfectly honest with you. Uh, I mean, clearly the Soul Dynasty thought 2U was better, uh, and they just didn't really want to keep Michelle anymore. Uh, so I'm not too high on this tank line either. Beast, I don't think he should even be fielded, to be perfectly honest, unless something weird like Ryan Unisa is meta for some reason. I don't know. Or Monkey Ryan, which people seem to be playing in my Riot games all day for some reason.
Huh.
Uh, I don't think Beast would should really be fielded. Uh, Ansunje, Aztec, Lastro all look promising, uh, but they are kind of part of the reason why this team is so high up. Uh, I think the the pre-existing synergy between Hiso and Sado is going to be a kind of the ride or die factor for this team. Uh, I think Hisu kind of has to carry the DPS role, Sado kind of has to carry the tank role, and the support role is kind of even down. I think KDG does have a lot of clout for what he did with Philadelphia last season. And while the argument can be made that he really lucked out with his uh, chosen players, he still did quite well with them. So yeah, I'm confident he can get something going with this roster.
Yeah, I think KDG's former synergy with Sado and Hisu will be key to this team's success. Uh, their DPS line is also fairly flexible. I think Neist especially provides them with a ton of different options, and I think he is the one that will actually make sure that this team can play in a wide variety of metas, even though he may not be insanely good on any of the heroes. Um, I actually didn't consider this earlier on when I was like before I actually sat down to make my power rankings, but KDG has worked with Michelle before as well. And back in season 2, Michelle was like genuinely decent. Uh, and I think KDG might be able to draw out some of that potential from him and set him up with one of his, I guess, chums you can call it at this point, Sado. So the tank line is, I think, going to be decent. DPS line is going to be decent. I say that only because Sado and Hisu are really good, and the rest of their role companions aren't. I think the support line is really solid. Aztec and Lastro have both proven themselves, either at Owl or the contenders level. And from what I've heard and seen of Ansun J, he is a really good main support. So I think a lot of people are sleeping on this team. I think they're going to be quite good. So should we then?
I'm
Yeah, one.
I'm looking forward to seeing whether Lastro types something in chat again.
Ah man, the fine's going to be massive this time round. But
Yeah, I mean he should write it in like code language, like Pig Latin. You know how Pig Latin works, right?
yeah, so
Where
it's
like if you're saying sure, you'll say like Corse, where the first syllable gets put at the end, and you add an a at the end. He should just write like a secret message and just hope that the owl producers don't notice. Or he could write in like, or I don't know. I just want to see something interesting in chat again. Anyway, so who's the next team?
so at rank 6, and we are getting down to some of the top teams here, is the Soul Dynasty. Now the Dynasty have got sort of a lot of split opinions about them. The reason we put them at 6th, I think we were fairly in agreement about roughly where they should be placed. I think we are both high on the DPS duo of Prophet and Fitz. They stood out a lot last year. Uh, I think the only reason they sort of fall short in the DPS department is when Prophet has to play the Echo, who he was pretty bad on last year. He's had many months to improve on that hero so far, so we think he'll have learned by now. The support line for this team is also pretty good with Anamo and Creative. Anamo having really solid positioning despite not being a playmaker, which is totally fine. He has put up some really good showings with the NYXL, so I have a lot of faith in him. And Creative has also shown to have some promise on the flex support role, so I think he's going to be fine. Um, the tank line is decent, I would say, nothing too special. But at this point, I think the key is that they need to have a proper tank rotation, right? Because Marvel hasn't played main tank consistently in a year. And you just can't put Gesture on all of the main tanks because he's not that good of a Reinhardt, especially. Uh, you'll probably put Marvel on the Wrecking Ball and the Reinhardt, and Gesture on the Winston and Orisa. That's the setup I see for this team. And Tuyo being a sort of stable off tank for them, I think he's shown some promise as well. But still remains to be seen. They've also got Sabiobi, who's sort of a leadership figure coming in and a veteran presence as well. He has been on a team that has been at the top, and I think that sort of experience at least makes a lot of it contributes a lot to any team structure. So he's going to help out, I think, behind the scenes a lot, and just shares experience with a lot of the other players. So yeah, I think we've pretty much nailed down that the DPS line is the key to this team putting up some incredible showings this year. But yeah, Nightwing, if you have any more points to add, go ahead.
Okay, so my concern with this roster, some of it has to do with just their tank rotation. Some of it has to do with how Profit and Jester just only really seem to come alive during playoffs, which has happened for 3 years straight, pretty much. Uh, I think I'm not very convinced about Tuyu, honestly. I think he has shown promise, but the promise is to be league average. I think when you're talking about the top six in the league, uh, considering that we've already put players like Gargoyle and Krong lower down, I mean, you cannot really compete with them, in my opinion. I mean, those guys are much more skilled than you. So it, like you said, it does come down to the DPS line of Fits and Profit. I think Savior B is almost a non-factor because if you want to play Tracer, you just play Profit. If you want to play McCree, you just use Fits. Um, he will come in very occasionally, I think, and his I mean his so-called pre-existing synergy with Anamo is basically useless, I think. Uh, so that's kind of my points of concern for this roster. I think if they put Marvel in off-tank jail again, which I mean they might just do. I don't really know what's up with Soul at some points. Uh, with Profit and Jester, some ego issues which could lead to some kind of disaster. I think there are just some tiny explosives on this team that are just waiting to explode. But just assuming that their head coach is just like the best, like a bomb squad member, he knows when to cut the red wire and when to cut the blue wire. Um, if he can manage that, then this team can definitely be quite great because individually, uh, uh, I think these pieces are kind of set up to work well. Uh, and even as a team, I think it should work fine. There is no like huge imbalances of like resource requirement, unlike with NYXL, where Jonak demands a lot of attention. Uh, Creative, I think people are a bit too high on him just because he did slightly well in the playoffs. So there are just I think it would not be completely surprising to see this team slip, and that could be due to a variety of reasons. But assuming that you're being optimistic about this team, this is a decent spot for them.
Yeah, you actually ranked them higher than I did, Nightwing. But yeah, I think we can close the chapter on Soul and move
Do
on.
as
Hmm.
do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, do you want to kick us off on rank 5?
Yeah, so at rank 5, we have the LA Gladiators. So they've got rid of OGE, they've put in Muse from contenders, and they've looked quite great in these lead up tournaments to the season. They've won, well, both of them. I was going to say all of them, but there's only been two. And in quite a convincing fashion, I would say. I mean, even though they had quite a close match with both uh, Boston and London. Uh, I think lads are just looking quite good. They have an insane support line with Mouse and Shoe. Uh, I mean, Skewed is there. He exists. I'm not going to say much more, or I'll trigger Cornelius. Um, Space is seemingly, apparently, like according to what Deepe has said on his videos, is quite motivated to perform better than he has ever has, um, which is great because Space has always had a lot of potential to be one of the best off tanks in the league, and I think arguably the best off tank, the Western off tank in the league. Uh, I think Muse is looking quite good, more consistent than OG. Uh, from what I can tell, anyway. I mean, during the course of the season, schedules get harder and so things change. But Muse is looking up, and they've got uh, a very good DPS rotation with Birdring, Kevster, and Mirror. Kevster being super flexible, Mirror being a flex DPS. Who can play the projectiles in the Doom when need be, and Birdring being a hit scan nut. They've got pretty much everything covered, I think, much better than Soul, at least. Uh, I mean, Soul does have two flexible players, but here they have three. So they're in a good spot, I think, in pretty much every position. I think uh, this is kind of DPS season to really prove himself as a premier head coach in the league. Apart from just mood and the dynasty that Prusty has created, DPS is probably like a lone challenger to that throne, or like that council of coaches. So this is really going to be his year to really show what he's got in terms of the coaching department. Because I think looking at it objectively, you would probably put the biggest question mark on his coaching more than uh, these players themselves, apart from Skewed, uh, which I will leave Prolius to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat my TED talk about Skewed at this point. The crux of it is that Skewed didn't really need to be on this team. Uh, when they had when they have a support line as competent as Moth and Shu, who can pretty much play any support combination under the sun. I feel like Skewed, especially coming in from Oz Gaming, which was one of the worst teams in Contenders Korea before these pickups happened, is a little bit weird. Skew's gameplay wasn't inspiring at all, to me at least. He didn't make any major plays, and yeah, I mean, I'm just puzzled why he's there. That's all. I don't know how much stock you can put into the fact that he did well in tryouts. If he's just a backup flex support, that's okay. But uh, if you're going to put him over Moth or over Shu, I'm going to be upset. I would have definitely placed this team higher in my power rankings. Skewed just wasn't there. If I knew for sure that Moth and Shu are going to be playing consistently. Yeah,
I
right?
think another player to look out for this season is Mirror, because this season, like we talked about in the roster review, I think they're looking to put him more, like make him lean more into his DPS role rather than plugging in holes, because they've kind of cleared they've bought a new block of cheese. There are no more holes in the cheese. So they can just put in Mirror on the actual DPS role that he's signed to play in the league, instead of putting him on Zarya. Because Space is motivated, uh, I think his Zarya will suffice, and the supports are cracked. So I think this is going to be a year that Mirror gets to show what he's made of on DPS for once. Uh, so yeah, who's the next team on the list?
Yup, so at rank 4, and here's where the controversy really begins, the Shanghai Dragons. Now, the main reason Shanghai is in at 4th is because I rated them lower than Nightwing did. Um, and the main reason is that I think Fate is a noticeable downgrade compared to Fearless. I think if Fearless was still in this roster, this would probably be a rank 1 team. Um, I I mean, if you look at compare Fate and Fearless, because that's the primary thing that's changed about this team. Even if you consider the additions of Oster and the re-signing of DM, actually, uh, it's it's not going to have as big of an impact as Fate being signed on as the sole main tank, because let's face it, Lip and Fleta are still going to be the starting DPS in most metas. I don't see Oster coming in over Fleta unless it's like a really niche scenario. Um, but if you just simply compare Fate and Fearless on an individual level, Fearless to me is clearly the better Winston. His Reinhardt is also clearly better in my opinion. There, neither of these players is known for their wrecking ball. I, I think I could admit that Fearless is a worse wrecking ball than Fate. In terms of Orisa play, I think it's even. Um, And even if you say that, Fate brings some leadership to the team, I don't think they really needed that leadership because they pretty much were the best team in APAC last year without having a, a leader, if you think that's what they were truly lacking. I think like, they just ran into a bad meta, and that's the reason they didn't do better during the final playoffs. I don't think a leader is what they needed. If they had Fearless and Void, I would just be going bonkers over this team. Um, but yeah, that's it. I'm not that high on Molly as well, who has been signed to flex support. I think Izayaki staying in is a much better move. Molly being there is probably just like for PR purposes, since they sort of needed a Chinese player to, for to appease the Chinese fans. Although some people are high on Molly, but yeah, I think those are my thoughts. I think it's still a really strong team, the Dragons, but uh, I don't like the downgrade of the main tank role from Fearless to Fate. You can share your thoughts, Nightwing.
I am not sure how much of a downgrade Fate is from Fearless, because Fearless looked terrible on Shanghai when he was playing in season one, right? Then he comes into Moon System, he does a lot better. Um, and Fate has worked with Moon in the past on Valiant. So he has some idea of what this player's weaknesses and strengths are, and maybe he knows how to really make Fate work better. So in that sense, I think there's a possibility that Fate might even look better than Fearless did last season, just because Fate, even without Moon at certain points, has looked quite decent. So that really comes down to, I think, what the coaching is more than what the individual player is like, because we've seen such drastically different looks from Fearless that I'm not really sure what to think of it personally. Um, I think yeah, Void is super strong. Uh, they've got a good flex support duo with Izayaki and Molly. Lijagon is obviously quite strong, uh, very aggressive, but also very just a very good main support player. And their DPS lineup is also very well rounded. Um, I mean, I would say they were very well rounded even if they just had Fleta and Lip, honestly. But Arthur is there. I think he's someone that really deserves this shorter redemption after being heavily benched by Atlanta. Uh, I think this is his season to really show that he's still got it. Otherwise, he'll just be, uh, you know, just like waved across uh, by the tide of player turnover in the Overwatch League, which is extremely high. Um, So yeah, I'm excited to see if Ulster can bring anything this season, but uh, it wouldn't be completely surprising if they weren't able to field them. So yeah, I think this team is in a very good spot to succeed, and top four is still it's still in contention to win a championship. Honestly, um, I think it's almost any given meta, any given day. Some teams can be up or down, but I think Shanghai is in quite a good spot.
Hmm.
So the next team that we've got on the list is the Dallas Fuel. So we ended up with them on number three because Proelius had put them on number one actually, and I had put them all the way down to sixth place, I think,
Yeah.
uh, below Washington Justice even, because I was just not convinced that them not having a viable tracer player was going to lead to them being able to do that much. I mean, obviously they can sign someone later in the season, but it's not that long of a season. This is 11 games. Uh, Traces in the meta right now with double bubble. I don't know who really picks up the tracer in this case, considering actually is literally next week, uh, where oh, it's actually this week. Uh,
Yeah.
so yes, yeah. So I'm not really sure what to really think of Dallas because of that. It might just be that I think I'm so important because I'm a tracer player myself. So I think, oh, if you don't have tracer, you it's a loss for you. Um, but apart from that, I mean, we're still putting them at third overall, which means they are quite a strong team. Hanbin is an excellent off tank. Fearless looked great on Shanghai Dragons, and despite what he looked like in season one, when he came in season three, uh, he would just completely change the game when he would come in over stand one, and would just exponentially increase the chance of the team doing a lot better, uh, which is kind of what helped them out in the main melee, I believe. Then they've got Fielder, Jexa, and Repel. So Fielder looked quite decent, uh, especially on high ping. So now that he's going to be on good ping, I'm interested to see what he can bring. Repel, not too high on him, but he was on a team like the Outlaws. So now that he's on a better caliber of team, he can still show something. Uh, Jexa is quite good. And then we've got Doha Sparkle and XZ on DPS with that little tracer one pick gap. Um, but apart from that, these players are incredibly flexible. Uh, Doha and Sparkle have done great in Sombra Doom metas, and they can pretty much play each other's heroes. And XZ is another hit scan, one of the best in the league. So this team is in a very good position to succeed. Uh, they've got a good staff, good org backing them, just like a bank vault full of money that they can throw at any player and fill up that tracer shaped hole in the roster if they feel like. So yeah, Dallas are looking good.
Hmm. So the reason I put in Dallas at number one is because I didn't want to put too much stock into their showing in the Nexus Cup. I genuinely think that they were playing in possibly the worst meta they could be asked to play. Because, well, Ball and Tracer are two of their biggest weaknesses. Fearless isn't really known for his ball play. They don't have a natural Tracer play on the team. I think it's a very niche situation that's not likely to happen for most of the season. And plus, double bubble is, ball tracer comps are generally counterable with better executions of double bubble or even rush to some extent. Just going into that coaching side a little bit, if you play something like Orion Diva or Orion Zarya against a ball tracer comp, which is, it's generally like ball Sigma tracer, something like that, tracer Ash, Zen, Brig, or Mercy Zen. Uh, if you just play for point presence, you play rush, you play heroes like May McCree on DPS, you can just shut down the ball in an instant. The McCree can keep the tracer in check. If you have a diva, she can keep the tracer even more in check, even deny the Ash fat dynamites. And even if you play something like double bubble, which I think Darius will be incredible at, um, it can keep sniper comps especially in check. A good Winston can just make life really difficult for Ash, even though he can't hard counter her. And you can have pretty similar playstyles. You need not play the Tracer. You can put, let's say, Doha Sombra, and you can play Sparkles Genji. You can play Sparkles Doomfist. Maybe not against a Tracer, but still. And you, if you just ignore Ball and Tracer, this team can play pretty much everything, right? They've got top tier tank and DPS lines. They've got decent supports. I think Jexa's leadership presence is going to be incredible. This whole team is Korean. A lot of them have played together with each other before and been incredible at the contenders level. They have proven coaches in Rush, Young, and Aid, who have Rush having done incredibly well with Aid in the Eternals roster last year, and having worked with Young in making Element Mystic championship caliber at the contenders level. So I honestly think when people say that Dallas is not going to be that good, the Dallas fans are going to be disappointed again, it's more just a meme. I don't think you should put too much stock into it. This is literally a team that was trying to hard force the meta, in which contained their possibly the worst hero combination they could be asked to play. Uh, Honestly, they were just they probably just decide to play the meta rather than reveal their other strats. I really am super high on this team. I don't know. It might have been a stretch that I put them above the shock and the fusion, even the dragons. But honestly, at this point, I just really want to put all of my analysis out there. I don't want to pretend that I think a team is weak when I think it's really good. So that's pretty much it. Should we move on to rank two, Nightwing?
Yes, who's on rank two? I wonder.
So rank two is going to be the Philadelphia Fusion. Now we know that they've got some visa issues, but we aren't going to factor that in too much because we want to review this roster and not the team with respect to its sort of visa situation right now. Because then you would have to factor in a ton of different stuff. You would have to factor in things like ping and just where the players are based and things like that. So that would get too complicated. The reason the Fusion we think are such a strong team is because they've retained a lot of their players from last year, which were key in their success. They did lose really good talent like Fury especially, but they made some superb signings. They've got Shockwave as a secondary hit scan player, who I think is a really good option for Hisu. Although I think Hisu provided that extra bit of flexibility with Sombra. I think Shockwave's still a really strong hit scan player. They've also got a pretty good tank line with Manu and Poco. Although they've brought in Hotba, I think Hotba's not as bad as people made him out to be. Yeah, that again I think was just a meme. Sure, he was feeding a little bit, but there are a lot of other players that have done that. Um, Plus, he has synergy with Mano, and also he has been on the Fusion before. So he has played with players like Poco and Carpe, even EQO. So he's sure to have some of that left in him. Um, and they've also sent Toby on main support since Funny Astro doesn't is probably not going to play on ping. And I think Toby is a good veteran presence. I don't think he's that good of a main support overall, but it's good that they've got someone who is familiar with the tier 1 scene and has performed at a high level in it in previous years to fill in for Funny Astro, who is actually one of the best main supports in the league right now. They already have rookie of the year for 2020 and Alarm, and they've still got some really solid DPS players in Carpe, EQO, Shockwave, and even Rascal coming in from the Shock. Um, they've also got 9K as head coaches coming in from the Paris Eternal and the San Francisco Shock before that. And I think he's got a ton of experience coaching championship level rosters at this point. So I have a lot of faith in him. So this team looks to be meta proof, other than the fact that they don't have a set Sombra player. But I'm still really optimistic. Nightwing, you can weigh in now.
Okay, so I'll try to be somewhat brief about this. I think some concern about this team will come from my concern about the difference in playstyle that Sado and Mano have, uh, and how Mano will fit into the team as a main tank. Uh, and it's going to be interesting to see how Toby instead of Funny Astro works with this team, uh, as well as Hotba. How good of a replacement is he for Poco? After not looking that great with the NYXL previously, when they tried to change the NYXL's playstyle to be more aggressive with Hotba. So those are the main kind of question marks for this roster that kind of put them below the stock. Uh, Toby, I think, at the very least, he's a very hungry player. He has eaten up three other support players in the past 3 years in the league, where he has, in 2018, he gobbled up Gambler. In 2019, he gobbled up Jackson Hiley, I believe. Um,
Not highly. Highly was a flex
no,
support. Just
all
Jaxa.
right. Yeah, and also just benched Slime in 2020. So he's just an extremely hungry player. So this time he's gobbled up Funny Astro, though that's more of the Korean government popping up there. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how Toby works with these people. I'm happy to see him on the roster. Uh, I think Manu and Hotbar really working together is the main question mark for me. I think the DPS and the support line are still in an incredibly good spot. Um, there's like no way you can go wrong with Carpe and Rascal. Shockwave is a good rookie coming in, and EQ is a good spectator because he won't be able to play on 300 ping. Um, but he might be good at like VOD reviewing. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, I mean, the Philadelphia is in a very good position. Uh, I think the way I ranked it, I put Shanghai above them just because I think uh, those guys have just had more time to work with their new signings. So at the beginning of the season, I think Shanghai will be better prepared because for Philly, I think some of this will be very sudden, uh, especially pathing with Toby on Lucio instead of Funny Astro, stuff like that. But I think as the season matures, I think Philly will definitely be punching above as well. So yeah, Philadelphia is in a great spot. So is there anything else you'd like to add about them, or should we go to the next team?
No, I think we can do the big big reveal about the rank one team. You can go
Okay,
ahead.
so if you haven't figured it out already, somehow the team you've put at number one
It's
is
tier
the
break.
SF Shock.
I'm kidding. Yes,
Is yeah, it's preds.solomon.io. Um, so yeah, the SF Shock, right? Back-to-back champions. They've got an incredible main tank rotation with Smurf and Super. They've got a very consistent uh, off tank in Choi Hyobin. Uh, they've got the world's best racer and striker. Um, I think the questions that you have for the Shock are how Blister, Nero, and Tayo fit into this roster. Uh, who plays what, stuff like that. And that is something that I still want to see answered. I think that could be a potential point of weakness for them. But that is probably the only point of weakness for them because their tanks are completely solid and their supports are completely solid, in my opinion. I think FD God, from what has been said online so far, he is very coachable. He's learning quite well with the team and they're working quite well. He's upbeat. He's looked quite good on the Paris tournament last year, and I think he'll work quite well here as well. Uh, Twilight and Violet, incredible flex support duo. Uh, Violet will probably be fielded more, but Twilight is also just an absolute crackhead. Uh, Krusty is obviously probably the best coach in the league, with very few contenders to his throne. Honestly, most of the people are people that he has taught himself, and uh, anyone that's uh, like not in his system is just and like maybe DP, but even DP is like questionable. Um, and they've got a good analyst in Casaurus, and they've got a good uh, the only other coach that has won the Overwatch League in London Spitfire, coach Agape, that's coming into Shock. So they're pretty much set up for success in like every which way. They've also got as a sponsor, they've got Herman Miller, so they'll have the best gaming chairs to play with. As you know, the best aim comes from having the best gaming chair. That's why Ans was actually the best aimer because he was on Shock.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the biggest question marks will be uh, how well Easter fills Arm's shoes and how well Nero and Tayo fill, I guess, Rascal's shoes in this roster. But apart from that, I mean, there's really not much that you would doubt Shock for. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, naturally, I had them at rank 2 in my power ranking, just below the fuel. I think they could easily have been rank 1 as well. I just have a few questions about this team. The first being that FD God's playstyle isn't something that we would have expected Moth to have on the shot. So, I mean, I think I framed that incorrectly. Essentially, Moth is a very team based main support. He prefers to enable his team way more than going for individual plays. He will make team based plays occasionally, but he won't just, enter enemy backlines, try and assassinate someone and get value that way, which is something that FD God likes doing fairly often because, I mean, he has that kind of game sense and that level of mechanics. But just changing someone's playstyle like that is no joke. And even though, yeah, we all worship at the Church of Krusty, uh, but for someone for whom a playstyle works that well, would you really want FD God to try and be Moth, or would you try and adapt the whole team to fit FD God's playstyle? I think that's a really big challenge. But if you've heard that he is adjusting well, Nightwing, I fully believe it honestly, because he is a really talented main support player. Uh, My other question marks were with respect to Glister and Nero because I personally wasn't that impressed with Glister last year. Sure, he was on a weak roster, but you can stand out in a weak roster, especially on hit scan, as proven by a player like Shockwave, who is just
Or
absolutely tracked.
Jerry.
To a lesser extent, much lesser extent, but yeah. Uh,
I think Jerry's standout factor is more his name and maybe the fact that he fell off the map once, but still.
yeah, yeah. You could even honestly mention DK a little bit because even Dallas wasn't that strong of a team, but DK was just carrying on hit scan. And even Nero, I think a lot of people are really high on Nero despite him not having gotten consistent playtime last year. Like 1 year is a really big gap. I mean, it's less, not 1 year, I think maybe like 6, 7 months. But still, I think Nero has to prove himself a little bit more for me to rate him as a championship caliber flex DPS player. So at this point, I do consider him a downgrade over Rascal. So these are the three main question marks I have. FD God's playstyle, Glister's ability to actually, be somewhat at Answer's level, and Nero's ability to be somewhat at Rascal's level.
And
Tayo
what are they doing with Tayo?
Tayo is just I honestly, if they just bring him in on rainy days for any of the DPS, I think he can do a decent job because he seems to. Okay, my bad there. I hit my I hit my speaker. Um, my headset. Sorry. So Tayo is a fairly flexible player. I'm still more optimistic about him because he's been part of Shock's culture for nearly a year now. So Krusty will have figured out some sort of role for him, and given his sort of vast hero pool, which he shows off on ladder a fair bit, I think he can fill in for any DPS player uh, as long as he just has to play consistently and not just pop off. Because I'm pretty sure Striker's a way better tracer than him. Nero is way better for flex DPS than him. Glister's possibly a better hit scan than him. I don't know how much stock I want to put into Glister right now, but yeah.
I don't know why they signed two flex DPS players when they already have an amazing Genji player on the roster. Like, it's kind
Super.
of weird.
I know, right? Super
Yeah.
just all they need, honestly. It's funny how we did like a whole segment about the shock and didn't mention Super until now. But yeah, Super's
Yeah,
there.
I mean,
Super's awesome.
Super is actually an incredible strength of the team.
Hmm.
I mean, he keeps up their PR, uh, and he's probably increasing their jersey sales, which means they have more money to feed their players. So that's great. Um, I think on a serious note, Super is also a really good just voice for the team, keeps up their morale, uh,
Hmm.
and I mean the TF in Super TF stands for the finisher. He's the one that comes in playoffs and just like make sure that the job is done.
Hmm.
So I think he's difference difference maker for the shock, and that's why they're at number one this season. I think I should make it clear that while we are power ranking shock at one, that doesn't mean we expect them to win the league. Because I think this year, like any of these top teams could really take home that title. But
Hmm.
I think we do at least expect them to win like maybe one tournament. Uh, and or that would be like quite a bad showing from Stock. Honestly, I think if they couldn't even pick up one out of the four tournaments, but even then, there's just a lot of talent in the league, so it's probably even then it's a hard ask.
Hmm.
So while we're not expecting them to win, I think at least making it to the playoffs and having a good run is something that we would expect out of the Shock at minimum.
Hmm. And yeah, it goes without saying that we haven't really considered anything beyond the actual roster when we made these power rankings. Because if we go into things like ping and player location, like I said, that opens a whole new can of worms, and that's just a lot to factor in, especially with some of the last minute signings that we've seen, especially from the Fusion. But we've tried to provide like completely genuine, unbiased, and educated perspectives on the matter. We know that these are fairly different from some of the power rankings from popular analysts out there. Uh, but honestly, we just want to share our genuine opinions. We don't want to, you know, cloud them and pretend that we agree with everyone else. Uh,
Write in the comments what your favorite power ranking has been so far.
uh,
I
even
honestly, mine
yeah.
has my favorite one has been John Spector's tier list of Overwatch League being an anime. You should really go check that one out. It has like Dallas is like in the main character tier, and then teams like I think Shanghai, Philly, Dallas. They're like no, not Dallas. Shanghai, Philly, Washington. They're like tournament arc bosses tier.
Hmm.
It's a really good power ranking. I think it's much better than ours. Uh, but, so just comment down below who your favorite power ranking is.
Or just even better, make a power ranking of the power rankings. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so I think we've shared all of our thoughts on all these teams at this point. We would really encourage you guys to take a look at our actual roster reviews in the Overseers playlist if you're interested in hearing us go in depth about all of the players and coaching staff and so on. Um, and I'm sure there'll be some comments down there to completely demolish these power rankings, but try and keep it civil. We respect your opinions. We just hope you respect ours as well. And yeah, any final thoughts to share, Nightwing?
Yeah, also if you feel like comment down below what you would like to see us cover during the actual Overwatch League season because we're trying to think of stuff that we can do during the actual course of the season. But if you have any ideas, then we'd appreciate them.
Yep, we will be doing our weekly predictions in our weekly episode now. We won't be naturally uploading as often as we were earlier because we were in a crunch for time because of how many teams there were. Um, but yeah, if you guys have got any ideas, please do share them with us. If you liked our
Yeah,
analysis and if you like these power rankings, do like the video. Share it with any Owl fans you know who might appreciate uh, these points of view, and do comment down what you think about all of these different teams and how they're coming together this season. Because I think the power rankings are especially like vastly different for a lot of different analysts this time round. So yeah, anything more to add, Nightwing? Do remember to subscribe, turn on the bell icon. By the way, I totally forgot about that. Uh, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Also, just like as a suggestion, like should I add like a Nightwing's Player of the Week or Play of the Week or Tweet of the Week? I don't know. Death of the Week. I could add a Death of the Week. No one does that. If you have an idea, then comment comment down below.
Yep.
And that's all.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for sticking around for so long, guys. It's actually 1:03 a.m. You can see we both had really tiring days. Nightwing just grinding ranked on DPS, and me just doing this after a long day at work. So, yeah, we appreciate you sticking by, guys, and we'll see you in our week one predictions episode, which will come up in a couple of days. Bye bye. See you soon.